about it. Someone tell me something great that happened this week. Micah.
We had homecoming for our school.
Nice. How was it?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Anything cool happen?
No.
All right. Well, cool. Gabby, Jordan volunteered you.
District champs.
Woo! Nice. Very cool. Oh, no one seems very excited about that.
I didn't even hear
Sorry.
what she said.
We
What?
won district
I didn't
champs.
even hear what she said.
Can you say that a little louder?
We won district champs.
For softball. No, just kidding. Volleyball. Okay. Is everyone in John 1? Is everybody in John 1? Good. Leave John 1. We're not going to be in John 1 today. And go to Mark chapter 6.
Yes.
Mark chapter 6. So, do you guys remember? We've been doing a 3-week character study on someone in the Bible. Who is it, Julia? Yes, nice. John the Baptist. And we've been looking at 3 different characteristics of John the Baptist. So who could tell me what the first one was that we looked at a couple weeks ago? I guess 3 weeks ago. Josh. Humility. How did we see that John the Baptist was a really humble person? Anybody remember? Okay, cool. Well, he was really humble. Okay, what was the second? Oh, yeah, Josh.
That he said that he wasn't even worthy enough to untie his sandals, and when they asked him who he was, he said he was a voice crying out in the wilderness.
Dude, if I had a gold star, I would give you 10. Does that ring a bell to everyone? Don't be so excited, guys, about John the Baptist's humility, okay? What was the second characteristic we studied about John the Baptist last Sunday? Maya?
Humility. Wait, last Sunday? Oh.
Well, you just gave us proof that you were not listening to anything Josh just said.
You said last week.
Yes, last week. Last week was not humility. Someone tell me, I'm going to pick on someone. Jordan.
Zeal.
Zeal, okay? John the Baptist's zeal or passion. Do you guys remember that? Does that ring a bell? How passionate he was for the Lord?
It was right there. It was above
You're
that
showing me your notes, but all I see is pictures
No, it's right
and doodling.
here. Humility then
Okay,
zeal.
okay, yeah. Yeah, so, okay.
I just said the wrong one.
So John the Baptist had an intense enthusiasm of passion for serving and following Jesus. Okay, so we talked about that. And remember, guys, every one of these characteristics, John set a really great example for how you and I should live. So what's the third characteristic of John that we're going to look at today?
Starts with C.
Starts with a C. Nice.
Commitment.
What?
Passion.
His compassion. No,
No.
dead wrong.
Commitment.
Good try though. What?
Commitment.
Commitment. No, wrong. What? Don't be afraid. Don't be shy, Jordan. Just say it.
Courage.
Say it with some passion.
Courage.
And zeal.
That was not any different than the last time we said it. Say it with some passion.
Courage.
Okay, it is indeed John the Baptist's courage. Golf clap for Jordan, everyone. Do you see how enthusiastic they are in their crowds? They don't care about you. It's quite unfortunate because you're pretty cool. All right. Yes, we're going to look today at John the Baptist's courage. But before we do, I have a question for you guys. Who do you know that has demonstrated courage before? Wow, you guys need to get to know some different people in life. Who's someone you know, Micah, that's demonstrated courage?
It's like now or like any time, like back then.
Someone you personally know.
Come back to me.
Okay. Gabby.
My friend right after he graduated high school went to the Marines.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very courageous thing. Nice. Awesome. All right.
I have a youth pastor who's pretty courageous.
Okay, how?
You
Tell me
travel
more.
all over the world, going to countries that aren't safe.
Okay. Yeah. For sure. Gabe, who's someone you know that's courageous?
I'll answer. Give me some time to think.
Okay. Cammy, the whole reason I called on you is because I just wanted to see the saucer eyes, okay? Cammy, who's someone you know that's courageous?
I don't know.
Who do you people hang out with? Do any of you guys know someone that's demonstrated courage before? Savannah, your dad. Okay, how so? Can all of you guys hear Savannah?
No.
Can you either speak louder or stand up and turn around and face the multitudes? Okay, go ahead. Can you guys all hear that in the back?
No.
Can you speak even louder?
He's been like a police officer and detective for like a bunch of years, and he does a lot of courageous things.
Okay, excellent example. Do you guys hear that?
No.
Savannah's dad is a police officer and a detective, and he's been one for many years, and he does a lot of courageous things as a police officer, and I completely agree with that. One of my brothers is also a police officer, and he has been in many extremely dangerous situations, having to put his life on the line to protect others, and it is a very courageous thing to do. Think about it, guys. When something like a shooting happens or something in public, when everyone is running away from it, there's only one group of people that are running toward the danger, right? That's the police, to try to stop the violence to protect innocent people. So that's a very courageous thing to do.
Firefighters.
Huh?
Firefighters, 9/11.
Yeah, firefighters in 9/11, absolutely. There are some people in our church actually who have family members or loved ones who died in 9/11. And the firefighters and police officers on 9/11 were very courageous. Isaiah, who's someone you know that's courageous?
My uncle.
How?
He's a firefighter.
Okay. Yeah, they very often have to put themselves in dangerous situations. Micah.
My second cousin, his name's Josh. He's in the army.
Okay. Yeah.
He's gonna get out.
Okay. That's a very courageous thing to do. Eric.
There's a guy in my neighborhood where he used to live in New York, and a guy tried hijacking a woman's car, and he like grabbed onto the door handle, and he got dragged like 60 feet, but the cops were able to get him, and now his whole side was all messed up. But
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very courageous thing to do to help protect someone. Priscilla, who's someone you know that's courageous?
my dad,
How?
he gets to witness me driving.
That does take a lot of courage to get in a car with a teenager and let them drive. Yeah, okay, nice. He's courageous in other ways too. Peter.
I have a friend.
Or Petrovsky.
Yeah. I have a friend joining the military, and then I have a friend, Ryan, who's joining the National Guard.
Yeah, awesome.
My sister's boyfriend is joining the Coast Guard, and he's like training and stuff. And also my dad, because he goes to Puerto Rico for work a lot, and like he like works on like boats and stuff that like come in. Like he has like a dock
Oh,
that's
wow.
like popular or whatever in Puerto Rico. And one time there was like criminals that came on and like snuck out, and he had to chase them down.
Wow.
The police officers.
Yeah, that can take courage for sure, right? So, guys, think about something. Let's define our terms. What is courage?
The absence of fear.
The absence of fear. That's an interesting definition. Okay, Micah?
The act of doing something that's unsafe.
Okay, what if it's something that's unsafe and stupid? Is it still courageous? Or is it just plain stupid?
It is plain stupid.
Okay, if it's plain stupid, it's not courageous?
No.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one. Okay, so let's you're on the right track, but let's kind of refine that definition a little bit, okay? So doing something that could be potentially dangerous, right? But it's not just in any situation, right, Micah?
Yeah.
So, Mariah, how would you define courage?
Taking action even when there is fear.
Okay, nice.
I would say that it's doing the right thing and knowing the consequences like could be harmful and like having that fear, but still doing it for the cause of something good.
Okay, good. Yeah, Gisela, how would you define courage in your own words?
In my own words,
Hmm?
I don't know.
Okay, do you want to phone a friend and have them help you out?
Well, someone said it's like bravery.
Okay. Yeah, so think about it, guys. Courage is not necessarily the absence of fear, though that can be part of it sometimes. Sometimes to have courage can mean that you really don't have fear for something. But I'm going to give you guys a definition of courage, okay? You ready? Courage is very oftentimes, it's feeling the fear, but going forward anyway. Okay? Feeling the fear and going forward anyway. So, how many of you guys have ever read the book or seen the movie To Kill a Mockingbird? Okay? If you haven't, you got it. It's such a good book, such a great movie. The girl in the movie and book is Scout, which is an awesome name for a girl. So in To Kill a Mockingbird, here's how Scout defines courage, and I love this. By the way, do you know what it means to be licked? Not like, yes, not like someone like licks you with their tongue. Lick like to get beat or whipped. Okay, that's when back in the old days when someone says like, man, they really got licked. It doesn't mean like, man, someone just went up and like licked their hand or something. To be licked means like you got beat or you got whipped or beat up, something like that. Okay, so here's how she defines courage. Scout says this, listen, real courage is when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway and see it through no matter what. I'm going to read that again. Real courage is when you know you're licked before, or like you know you're beat before you begin, but you begin anyway and see it through no matter what. Does that make sense? So think about it, guys. Like courage, this is why courage isn't always just going into a dangerous situation, right? Because there's some dangerous situations that you shouldn't be in, right? If you hang out with the wrong people and they're like, hey, let's go rob a bank, you're like, that's a dangerous situation. Cool, I'm going to do it with courage. No, you're an idiot, okay? That's a really stupid thing to do. But courage is going into something that could be dangerous or could be scary for you, but Peter mentioned this, it's the right thing to do. And so you do it even if you're afraid. Okay? Now let's take, for example, a man at a mall, and there's some kind of person, maybe like an active shooter. Okay? Is that man, like, is he supposed to, would it be wrong for him to run away to protect himself? No. Okay? It's not like he has to go forward and try to stop the threat. Okay, so it's not like you're always obligated to do it, but if he did go forward to try to stop the person, would that be courageous? Yes. Okay? Does that make sense? So, what did we learn about John the Baptist last week? What characteristic was it? His passion, his zeal for the Lord. Now, let me ask you, did his passion for God, did it cost him something? Yeah, it came at a cost. And that's what we're going to look at today. But before we begin reading in Mark 6, I want you guys to write this down. Okay, ladies, pay attention. Write this down. Living out God's mission for your life will come at a cost. I'm going to say that again. Living out God's mission for your life will come at a cost. Let's look at what it cost John. Mark chapter 6. Who wants to read for us? All right, Gabby, can you read verses 17 and 18?
For Herod had sent soldiers to arrest and imprison John as a favor to Herodias, brother Philip's wife, but Herod had married her. John had been telling Herod, "It is against God's law for you to marry your brother's wife."
Okay. So you have Herod. This is not Herod the Great who tried to kill Jesus when he was born. Okay, this is a different Herod. That guy has been dead a long time. This is Herod Antipas, okay, which was one of Herod the Great's sons. And so Herod Antipas, there's a lady mentioned here. What's her name? Herodias, okay? Now, here's the gross part of the story. This Herod, he had a relationship with his sister-in-law. Okay, so his brother Philip was married to Herodias, and she cheated on her husband with her brother-in-law, Herod Antipas, and then she kind of like left Philip and then married her brother-in-law. Pretty gross, right? So that's kind of the backstory. Now, here's the question, guys. How does John exemplify courage in the verses we just read?
He rebuked Herod.
Exactly. So there's three ways, or three things I want to mention, guys, of how John exemplified courage. The first, he confronted someone in sin, which is what Matthew just said. He confronted someone in sin. Now, have you guys ever done that before? Raise your hand if you've ever confronted someone and called them out in their sin. Is that ever a scary thing to do?
Yes.
For sure. Why? Why can it be scary?
You don't know what they're gonna say about you.
Yeah, you don't know how they're going to respond, right? For sure.
People don't usually like hearing it, and so you can definitely lose friends and relationships with people.
Yeah. How many of you guys enjoy being liked by people? How many of you love being hated and reviled by people? Yeah, right? So when you go and confront someone in their sin, even if you do it in a biblical way, they might hate you for it. So it could be kind of a scary thing. So the first way John showed courage is that he went and he confronted someone in their sin. But here's the second way he exemplified courage. Kimmy, who did he confront in their sin? It's just some random guy on the street?
No.
Was it one of his siblings?
No.
He didn't have siblings, but yeah. Who was it? A king. Now, why would that take courage? Eric.
Because the king has the right to slay you.
Yeah, he doesn't have the right necessarily, but he does have the power, right? So the king could kill you back in that day if he didn't like what you said. So John showed great courage. And the third point, and by the way, guys, John knew that it came at a risk, but he went forward anyway. The third point is this, guys. John stood for truth and for righteousness, even though it came at a cost. And guys, John had a lot of courage. Now, do we know if John the Baptist was fearful as he did this? Do we know if he was fearful or not? No, it doesn't tell us whether or not he was fearful. So courage doesn't always necessarily mean you have to be fearful and go forward anyways. It could be that you're not fearful, but you're doing it because it's right, even though you know it could cost you, right? But regardless of whether John was fearful or not, he had a lot of courage. And he set a really good example for you and me. Because guys, listen, in your everyday life, every single one of you in this room, there are opportunities you have to display courage. And there are also opportunities you have to display cowardice. Think about that. I want you to be thinking this morning of some situations in your life, some circumstances where you have the opportunity to rise above and show courage. Be thinking about that. So, how did John, we saw how he displayed courage. What did it cost him? We just read of the first thing it cost him. Do you guys catch it? Verse 17 and 18? It cost him his freedom. We usually only ever think about the next thing it cost him. But think about it, guys. It cost him his freedom. Let me ask you, how many of you would be willing to take a stand for the truth, to stand up and speak out if you knew it would cost you your rights and your freedoms as an American? Would you do it? Even if you were totally unjustly treated and thrown in prison, which is not a safe place. But not only is it not safe, you no longer have your rights and your freedoms, or at least a lot of your rights. Would you do it? That comes at a big cost, right? But John did it. And it cost him his freedom. It cost him his rights. Again, guys, he's an amazing example for us. But let's look at what else it cost John. Who wants to read? Okay, Maya, can you read 19 through 24? And then Peter, can you read 25 through 29?
How do you pronounce her name?
Herodias, or Herodias.
So Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But she was not able to because Herod feared John and protected him, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man. When Herod heard John, he was greatly puzzled, yet he liked to listen to him. Finally, the opportune time came. On his birthday, Herod gave a banquet for his high officials and military commanders and the leading men of Galilee. When the daughter of Herodias came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guests. The king said to the girl, "Ask me for anything you want, and I'll give it to you." And he promised her with an oath, "Whatever you ask, I will give you, up to half my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask for?" "The head of John the Baptist," she answered.
And she came in immediately with haste to the king and asked, saying, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." And the king was exceedingly sorry, but because of his oaths and his guests, he did not want to break his word to her. And immediately the king sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. He went and beheaded him in the prison, and brought his head on a platter and gave it to the girl. The girl gave it to her mother. When his disciples heard of it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb.
So that's the story. And by the way, there's a second gross part of the story. Herodias' daughter, who was probably pretty young, she came on Herod's birthday, and she danced before him and his friends. Now, it's not like I'm going to do, some ballet and, see my great dance skills. I can't lift my leg past there. So it was like the idea is she danced in a sexually provocative way. So Herod and his friends are a bunch of pervs, okay? They're grown men, and this young girl comes in. She's dancing in inappropriate ways, and he's so happy by it. He says, "Hey, ask whatever you want. I'll give it to you up to even half my kingdom," which is, what a stupid thing to say. And so she goes to her mom, and her mom hates John the Baptist. Why?
She called him.
He stood for the truth. He called her out. And she does, see guys, here's the thing. Sinners don't like their sin being exposed for what it is. And so if you choose to be a Jesus follower and you follow his example by speaking truth, that's going to offend people at times. That's going to anger people. That you will receive hatred and threats from people if you do that. Here's a way that my dad demonstrated courage one time. He's demonstrated courage. He's one of the most courageous people I think I've ever known. But one of the ways he demonstrated courage was before I was even alive. My dad was a cop in one of the most dangerous parts of San Diego, where a lot of gang members were, and he was on the SWAT team as well, okay, which is like very, very, yeah, like the best cops that are out there. And he had a fellow police officer who, on numerous occasions, exemplified a lot of prejudice and racism toward people of other races. And my dad had seen him many times, and this man was actually caught doing that once and was put on trial. And one of like the most fundamental things in the police department is you never rat out your fellow police officers. You never testify against them. You always have their back no matter what, even if they did something wrong, which is not a good thing, policy, right? You should always be standing for the truth. But that's in many police departments, not all, but in many police departments, that's the mentality. And if you do stand against one of your fellow police officers, then like, don't expect on a dangerous call to be given backup by other cops. Like, you're on your own, and if you get killed for it, whatever. You know, so this guy is on trial, and my dad was actually called to testify. And so my dad was on the witness stand in court, and he was asked, have you ever seen or known this police officer to show prejudice and racism toward people of other races? And my dad did the right thing. He testified and told the truth because he swore that he would tell the truth. And as a result, he got death threats. He got things in the mail, death threats in the mail. They were going to kill him and my mom. You know, he was totally ostracized by other people, and he paid a very great price for it. But he chose to stand for the truth because it was the right thing to do. And guys, that's going to happen to each one of us. When you choose to stand for the truth, sometimes it will be received. There will be other times when you stand for the truth, and man, you're going to make enemies for it. Does that mean you shouldn't stand for the truth? Did Jesus gain enemies by standing for the truth? Did he gain friends too? Yeah, but he gained many enemies as well. And if we follow Jesus, the same is going to happen to us. What's the second thing? So the first thing it cost John was his freedom, right? What's the second thing that we just read about that it cost John for standing for the truth? His life. Have you ever thought about, not to be morbid or anything, have you ever thought about like how you want to die one day? My mom has said she just wants to die like all dressed really nice and just die peacefully in her sleep. You know, like people, how do you want to die one day?
I want a Viking funeral.
A Viking funeral?
Yeah,
Okay,
like
nice.
Senator, the flaming arrow.
With the flaming
Yeah,
arrow?
absolutely.
Send you out and
Right off of Dania Pier.
Yeah, okay. Nice. Okay, but what about like how you die? How do you guys want to die? In a bed? Sleeping?
Yeah.
Okay, nice and peacefully? Okay. How about the rest of you guys? Anyone else? Priscilla?
I want to die in the mission field, knowing that I've done a great job. I don't know, that just feels like heroic and great, and I get cool stories out of it.
What, where in heaven? Hey guys, like look how I've done it. Okay, nice. Yeah, that's an awesome, what a blessing that would be. What about the rest of you guys? How would you want to die?
As long as it's quick.
Okay, quickly. Joe?
I would want to die laying my life down for somebody else.
Okay. Think of how John the Baptist died. Like, he died alone in a dungeon without any company of friends or loved ones to encourage him in his hardship. That's a pretty sucky situation, right? I mean, guys, he died in the presence of his enemies, having his head sliced off of his body. Like, there's nothing pretty about that. It's a horrible situation. But here's the point, guys. John the Baptist held fast to the end. He stood strong until the end. What an incredible example for you and I of courage. John knew the risk, but he went forward anyway. Why? Don't miss this point, guys. John the Baptist, he knew the risk, but he went forward anyway because he knew, guys, that ultimately there was a far greater king than Herod that he would have to answer to after death. And it was far more important to honor him than to preserve his own self, his own life, for the short time he had on earth. And the same is true for you and I, guys. So, what did Jesus have to say about John the Baptist after he died? Everyone turn with me to Luke chapter 7. A little bit to your right, Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7. What did Jesus have to say about John the Baptist? Gabby, you want to read for us?
Yeah.
Can you read nice and loud verse 28?
I tell you, all of you who have ever lived, none is greater than John. Yet even the least person in the kingdom of God is greater than he is.
Okay, and there's another passage in the Gospels where Jesus says that among the prophets there was no greater prophet in history than John the Baptist. That's what Jesus had to say about John the Baptist. Is that awesome or what? I mean, what an honor to be given that title from Jesus. That, hey, there's no greater prophet that has arisen than John the Baptist. So let me ask you guys. Do you guys think that today, on October, 20th? On October 20th, 2024, do you think that today John the Baptist has any regrets, or that he is regretting his decision to stand for the truth, to stand for righteousness? Not at all. That's the idea, guys. You need to have an eternal perspective. Right now, if I stand for the truth, man, it might really suck. And I might receive some really negative consequences, and people might hate me or even persecute me. But man, guys, in the long run, is it worth it? And it says a lot about your character if you are willing to do the right thing now, even though it's hard, rather than do the easy thing, which not always, but is oftentimes the wrong thing to do now to experience temporary comfort. There's a book called Pilgrim's Progress. I think it's one of the top 5 books every Christian needs to read. I've read it probably 10 or 12 times in my life. And there's this guy named Christian. He's a Christian, but his name is Christian. And the whole book is an allegory of basically the Christian life. And as Christian is going through this life on earth, he faces many challenges, many joys, many obstacles for following Jesus. And there's a point shortly after he gets saved that he's coming up to this place where he's going to lodge with some friends that are going to help him on his journey. But before he can get to the gate, there's 2 massive lions on either side of the path that are roaring and that are just like massive and terrifying. And here's what Christian says. It's a powerful statement. He says, when he sees he's about to face these 2 lions, at first he's terrified and considers going back, but then he decides to go forward. And here's what he says: I must venture. To go back is nothing but death. To go forward is fear of death and life everlasting beyond it. I will yet go forward. I love that attitude of, man, you know what? If I go forward in this situation, it might be scary. I could even lose my life, but man, what happens after that? Eternity in heaven. So it's a win-win for the Christian, right? Turn with me to Proverbs chapter 25. Proverbs 25. You know, guys, I can personally attest to this. How it can be kind of scary going forward sometimes. So, when I was younger, I was probably 19 years old. For like 8 or 9 years, I did a homeless ministry in downtown San Diego with a good friend of mine. And we would meet, several people, we would meet at this warehouse near downtown beforehand, and we would get water bottles and snacks and stuff that we kept at this warehouse. And so one Sunday, I happened to be there earlier than everyone else. So it's just, it's this warehouse in this business lot. So it's a Sunday, there's no one there. But I'm just sitting there in the parking lot by myself in my car. And I see two little kids come up on their skateboards, and they're just kind of skating around in this parking lot. And so I'm just hanging out, waiting for everyone else to arrive. And then suddenly these two big guys come up to these little boys. Little boys are probably like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. And these guys that come up to them are adults. And I see in my rear view mirror, I see these guys push the little kids up against the wall. And obviously I can't hear anything that's happening, but I can see what they're doing. And they say something which obviously meant they were telling them to like get their wallets and money out. And so then the kids do, and then they take it. And so these are adults doing this to little kids. And so in that moment, I knew, okay, you know what? I have a decision to make. I can sit here in my car and do nothing. Maybe pretend that I didn't see it. I could come up with all different kinds of reasons of why I shouldn't get out of my car and go defend these kids. Or I can get out of my car and go confront these guys, and I have no idea if these guys have a weapon on them, or even if they try to fight me, it's like 2 against 1, and one of them was pretty big. So what do? Well, I knew what I needed to do. And so by God's grace, he gave me the courage to get out of my car, and I walk up to these guys, and I just called out to him and said, hey, guys, what are you doing? And one of them he puts his hands in his pockets, which usually, like, he was pretending like he had some kind of weapon, and maybe he did, I don't know. But he told me, get back in your car. And I said, no, dude, not happening. Like, give the kids back their stuff. And so he starts raising his voice and says, get back in your car. And so I'm like, no, you need to give the kids back their stuff. And so then they both come up to me and try to like surround me and stuff. And then I just asked them, do you not fear God? To do what you're doing, knowing that God is watching you, do you think that you're really going to get away with this in the end? And then they actually, surprisingly, like cooled way down. And it ended up going better than it could have. But it was scary. I was scared. Because it was like, dude, I'm trying to go serve the homeless right now, and I might get like shanked. But I knew I needed to stand up for these kids because no one else was around to help these kids. And and the point, guys, is God can and will give you everything that you need to stand for what's right if you look to him for help. But look at the contrast. Guys, sometimes going forward to do the right thing, it's really hard. Have you guys ever experienced that? How many of you, by show of hands, have ever experienced, man, it's really scary and really hard sometimes going forward to do the right thing? Yeah, a lot of you guys. And there's all kinds of reasons, again, guys, that you could justify of why you shouldn't stand up, why you shouldn't speak out, why you shouldn't go forward. But guys, listen. In those situations, remind yourself of one of the main reasons of why you should go forward. And it is this. Because it is right. Because it's the right thing to do. And that alone should be enough. Look at the contrast. Proverbs 25. Look at verse 26. Proverbs 25:26. It says, a righteous man who falters before the wicked is like a murky spring in a polluted well. You guys understand what that means? How many of you guys have ever been to the Florida Springs? They're beautiful, aren't they? Water's so crystal clear, so clean, probably, that you could drink from them, right? I wouldn't, just in case. But, you know, if you've ever been to a well, you drink water from the well, okay? Would you ever drink from a spring that was all muddy, like brackish water in all of our canals? No. Probably get like 2,000 parasites, okay? It's disgusting and it's terrible for you. What does Solomon say? The righteous person who does what? Yeah, my translation says falters. Yours says what? Who gives in. Hey guys, do you need to be separated? Pay attention. The righteous person who falters or gives in to the wicked, who kind of cowers and is like, oh my gosh, well, I'm afraid of what they'll do or think or say, so I'm just going to give in to whatever they say. Solomon says the righteous person who does that, you know what they're like? What's it say? Yeah, a muddy spring, dirty water. Think about that. And then look at one other verse. Look at the next chapter. Proverbs 29, verse 25. Sorry, I said the next chapter. I do know how to count. 29. I thought it was 26, but it's actually 29. Okay. So, Judah, could you read for us?
25?
Proverbs 29, 25.
Yeah. The fear of man brings a trap, but whoever puts his trust in the Lord shall be safe.
The fear of man brings a snare or a trap. How many of you guys have ever been afraid of people? What they might say, what they might think, what they might do. Every one of us have. The Bible says, look, if you're afraid of people, if you fear people, that's a trap. What's the contrast? But those who trust, come on guys, what does the verse say?
The Lord.
And the Lord will be safe. So think about that, guys. Let me tell you a story. In World War II, there was a group of Christians at a church in Germany who, I'm going to read this story for you. I read it many years ago, and it's a very powerful story. There was a German town that had railroad tracks right behind the church. Okay? It says this. This is the account of someone who was part of the church afterward. Okay? They said, we heard stories of what was happening to the Jews, but we tried to distance ourselves from it because we felt, what could anyone do to stop it? Each Sunday morning, we would hear the train whistle blowing in the distance, then the wheels coming over the tracks. We became disturbed when we heard cries from the train as it passed by. We realized that it was carrying Jews like cattle in the cars. And if you guys know, these were taking Jews to concentration camps where they would be murdered. So what did all these Christians do in this church? Week after week, on Sundays at church, the train whistle would blow. We dreaded to hear the sounds of those wheels because we knew that we would hear the cries of the Jews en route to a death camp. Their screams tormented us. We knew the time the train was coming, and we heard the whistle blow. When we heard the whistle blow, we began singing hymns. By the time the train came past our church, we were singing at the top of our voices. If we heard the screams, we sang more loudly, and soon we heard them no more. Years have passed, and no one talks about it now, but I still hear that train whistle in my sleep. Would you say that what these Christians did was courageous? No. Anything but that. They saw a problem. They saw their fellow human beings being mistreated. And what did they do? They did nothing. They didn't stand up for what's right. What would have happened if they did?
They probably weren't.
Most likely they would have been killed. But see, guys, do you know the really old saying that the wicked prevail when righteous people do nothing? Does it take a lot of courage in that situation to stand up and speak out? For sure. Could it cost you your life or even torture of your body? Yeah. But does that mean we shouldn't stand up for what's right? I mean, guys, that's why one of the main reasons so much evil happens in the world is because people don't stand up for what's right. Christians should be the people more than anyone else in the world that take a stand for what is right. It might be scary going forward against opposition, guys, especially if you stand alone. But I want to just finish by saying a couple things to you guys. Keep pushing forward, guys, no matter the cost. And I want you guys to remember, when you do the right thing, when you stand up for what's right, even if you are doing it alone and no one else is doing it with you, I want you to remember something, guys. You are not alone. You guys know what God's word says, what he promises to Joshua? Look at Joshua chapter 1. If you have a town, is anyone wearing a town center shirt this morning? Okay. If you have a town center shirt at home, this is the verse on the back. And it's Courtney's favorite verse. Or at least one of them. Joshua chapter 1. This is God speaking to Joshua. Look at what he says in Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. Joshua was afraid. And here's what God says. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed. Why not? For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Guys, you will have opportunities in your life. You do. Weekly. But you will have opportunities in your life to demonstrate courage by standing for what's right and going forward, even though it's scary. But do it. Even if none of your friends or family members or loved ones, even if no one stands with you and you're standing alone, remember, guys, you're not alone. The Lord is with you. And have you guys ever heard of John Knox? He was a Christian in church history. And he said this: he who stands with God is always in the majority. Don't you love that? Hey, even if no one else stands with you, if God is standing with you, you're the majority. You're not in the minority group. You're in the majority, because who's stronger or greater than God? The second thing to remember, guys, you're not alone because you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who have gone before you. Courageous men and women in Scripture and throughout history. People like David, who went all by himself against Goliath. David was like some of your guys' age in here. And he went against a guy whose height is taller than the ceiling. And he went alone. When you choose to demonstrate courage and stand for what's right, you're in company with David. People like Esther, who went before the king, though it could have cost her her life. And she said, hey, if I perish, I perish. I'm going to stand for the right thing, even though I'm terrified and even though it might cost me everything. What an incredible example. You stand with people like Esther when you stand for the truth and what's right. You stand with witnesses like Daniel, who it almost cost him being torn apart and eaten by lions. you stand with people like his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who, because of their stance and their literal stance, they refused to bow the knee in worship to a false god. They chose to stand on their feet and say, we will not bow. And even if we perish in this fire, we're not going to. And they got thrown in. The Lord miraculously saved them. But they said, yeah, even if God doesn't save us, we're not going to bow. You're in company like that. You're in company with Joshua and Caleb in Numbers 13 and 14 when they were 2 of the 12 spies that came back and gave the report, and the other 10 spies were like, no, don't listen to Joshua and Caleb. There's giants in the land. We're all going to die. And then all of the people of Israel wanted to kill Joshua and Caleb because they had the courage to stand up. You're in company with people like William Wilberforce. You guys know who he was? He was a man in the 1700s and I believe the early 1800s in England when the slave trade was going on. And he was one of the primary figures, instruments God used to destroy the slave trade in the British Empire. He was reviled, he was hated, he was threatened by so many people. People hated his guts because he believed that God created all people equal. And he stood to abolish the slave trade in the British Empire, and he fought it for years and didn't win, but he kept fighting, he kept pushing forward, and he had the courage to keep fighting, and finally they won. And the slave trade was abolished in the British Empire. You're in company like that, guys, when you choose to stand for the truth. And the list can go on and on and on. And I'll close with one verse. Everyone turn, last verse, to Acts chapter 20. Acts 20. I want to read a quote to you for you guys. Leonard Ravenhill. He was an old revival preacher who's now in heaven. He was from Britain, Great Britain. He said this. In his book, Why Revival Tarries, he said this. He who fears God fears no man. He who kneels before God will stand in any situation. I love that. Guys, if you're kneeling before God, in other words, if Jesus is your king, then you will be able to stand in any situation. Acts chapter 20. This is the last time Paul sees the Christians in the city of Ephesus. And look at the incredible testimony he had. Acts chapter 20. Can someone please read verse 24?
But I do not account my life of any value, nor as precious to myself, if only I may finish my course and the ministry that I received from the Lord Jesus, to testify to the gospel of the grace of God.
Don't you love that? Would you love to be able to say that about yourself? I do not count my life dear to myself. We read this verse last week, Philippians 1:21. Paul said, for to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Do you count your life dear to yourself? Or is your attitude, hey, like Esther, if I perish, I perish. I'm not going to stop standing for what's right. How many of you guys remember our Revelation study that we did on Wednesday nights? In Revelation 12, it says of these people who died for Christ, they were martyred for Jesus. It says they did not love their lives to the death. I love that. May we have that same testimony. So guys, in what situations in your life do you have opportunities to demonstrate courage? I want to hear your guys' answers. Because you may not be every single week in a situation where you might literally die for following Jesus, right? But what are some situations in your guys' everyday life where you have the decision to be courageous? You have an opportunity to be courageous. Can you guys think of any scenarios in your life where sometimes that happens, where you have the opportunity to demonstrate courage by standing for what's right?
Sharing your faith.
Sharing your faith. You guys ever scared to do that? It can be scary sometimes. Why? How many of you love being rejected? Yeah, none of us want to be rejected, so it can be a little scary, right? What's another scenario where you guys have an opportunity to show courage? Can you think of any? Maya?
Mission trip.
Mission trips? Okay, it can be for sure. Peter?
I've got a friend that like nobody wants to like show him his sin because no one wants to deal with it, and I've been thinking about that a lot recently.
Okay, so how would you have an opportunity in that situation to demonstrate courage?
Every time that he makes a joke or he lies or he just does something stupid, or is hypocritical, whatever, say something about it to him.
Okay, for sure. Speaking the truth, right? Sarah, what's a situation where you might have an opportunity to demonstrate courage? Could be at school, at home, with your friends, on the ice rink.
I would just say like at school, like just presenting, like doing presentations, like it takes a lot of courage to do that, and sometimes I don't have the courage to do that.
Okay, all right. Can the Lord give you the courage to do it?
Yeah.
So what's the key?
That if I like pray about it and like ask the Lord to help me, then I'll be able to do the presentation with no
Cool.
worries.
Yeah. What about the rest of you guys? What's an opportunity where you have to demonstrate courage, Gabe? Nothing? Okay, other Gabe.
Standing up for someone that's being mistreated.
Do you guys ever witness someone being mistreated? Ever? What do you do when you witness it? Do you pretend you don't see and just try to look the other way? Do you stand up and speak? All right.
I think like the opposite is like sometimes my brother is mean and like does things that are just really rude and I want to like retaliate, but like it kind of shows courage to not say anything in that type of situation and like not start a fight or like retaliate and like just kind of take the hit. Takes courage too.
Yeah. Can you guys all hear Savannah?
So like in Sarah, we go to public school, we go to Boca High, and like there's a lot that goes on and stuff, and I feel like it's not like physical courage, but like I feel like not feeding into the lies and sins of like most kids at that school, like it's courageous, it's not feeding into the
100%. I'm gonna repeat what she said since she was way too loud. She said her and Sarah go to a public school, and it takes a lot of courage, and I completely agree with this, to not be like everyone else in the sinful things that they do, right? To choose to do what's right, even when everyone else is following a sinful lifestyle. It takes courage to stand out, right? Not in a weird way, but like to stand out by simply doing what's right and following what Jesus says. That takes a lot of courage, right? Because people can make fun of you for it, ridicule you for it. You can lose friendships and whatnot. That takes a lot of courage, for sure. Youth leaders, what are some ways you guys think these kids experienced scenarios or situations where they can demonstrate courage? Anything come to mind?
Aside from everything, go ahead. No, I was asking aside from everything there you said.
Yeah, sure, or in addition.
I think, when I was in college, there was, this guy in the cafeteria that always sat by himself, and he was super tall, super skinny, and he kind of looked odd, and he had big glasses, and I always saw him sitting there, and I didn't want to be weird, because I didn't know this person, but I kept feeling like I needed to go and sit down and talk to this person, because, obviously not anybody to sit with, and, so I went there, and I sat down, and he turned out to be like this he was really incredibly smart guy, but he was also really funny, and, like throughout, like the rest of the college career, it actually turned out to be like a very good friendship, but, it was kind of odd, that nobody wanted to sit with him, and then once you start doing that, then your friends kind of like come along, and, we kind of created that little group that we always sat together, and so sometimes it just takes a little something, to do something, especially if you feel like God is telling you to do something. If you don't do it, that is disobedience. So if you feel like maybe the Holy Spirit is telling you something, and like over and over, you have to be obedient and take that step of courage and to go out and do something like that.
And think of the impact it made in that guy's life. Right?
And in turn, it was like a blessing for me and for all these other people, because he really was like, he still is an incredible person. I haven't talked to him in a long time. But, like take that chance, not just, because God looks at our heart, not at appearance. So sometimes somebody that can look a little bit odd, it might not be really that odd after all.
Yeah, awesome.
First of all, I totally agree with that, and definitely encourage you guys when you come to youth group, like, if somebody, especially if they're new, if they're by themselves, like, it's hard sometimes to be the person to walk up and say hi and try to be welcoming, but that's where courage comes into play, doing something that is kind of scary. But in addition to that, the way I encourage you guys is, it can be really easy to, if you know that you have sin in your life or some type of failing, it can be really scary to then go and confess it to somebody. But as Christians, we're called to do that. We need to do that. So that's another place that you can demonstrate courage, is going to, whether it's confessing to a friend, depending on what it is, or somebody like a youth leader, just saying, hey, I'm struggling with this sin, I need prayer, I need to confess it, I'm moving, whatever. It's really hard to do, to admit that you're failing, but it's really important, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would say, especially for you guys that are younger, all everyone was younger. Kind of like what Jay was saying about feeling like you're the only one standing for what's right. As a Christian, and you're living in the world we live in, you're gonna find yourself oftentimes needing to have the courage to be different than what everyone else is doing, or going against what everyone else is doing. You gotta use your judgment on that. Like, who are you trying to impress? Are you trying to impress man, or are you trying to impress God? Are you trying to do what's right in the eyes of man, or are you gonna do what's right in the eyes of God? So oftentimes as you get older, you're gonna find yourself standing alone, and you just gotta have the courage to not be scared to be different, not be scared to be a little weird. And like Jason, not in the bad way weird, but people are gonna look at you and wonder why are you that way? Why didn't you do what everyone else did? Why are you choosing to be different? And those opportunities, God's gonna open up doors for you to share your faith. Just by standing up for what you know is right and what God says is right and what God says is true. In a culture that is completely against a lot of what we believe. We're gonna have to have courage to be different.
Yeah.
I would have a takeaway from a situation. I remember when I was in high school, not that long ago, and if you do witness someone standing up for somebody, encourage that person. Cause they're doing the right thing, but there's still doubts sometimes, like I would wholeheartedly would think that. And just, you know, go up to them and say, man, you did the right thing. Encourage that person, 'cause that just, it's another building block in their faith. And there's people out there that's a gift, they're encouragers. You know, let that hang out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you guys feel like it ever takes courage for you at youth group, like Courtney said, to go meet someone else and talk to them? Every time I tell you guys, go spend the next 3 minutes, I know you hate my guts for it, but is it ever like daunting? Demonstrate courage. Yeah.
I was just saying, yeah, no, it's terrible.
Okay, yeah. How about, do you guys ever witness your friends doing something wrong? Gossiping about someone? Talking bad about someone? Doing something they shouldn't? Can it be scary to go confront that group of friends and say, hey guys, this is wrong. We shouldn't do this? You think that would take courage? Especially if all of them go against you. But is it the right thing to do? Be a good friend by standing for what's right. Lord, we thank you for who you are. God, we thank you for giving us your word and the many wonderful examples that we have in Scripture and throughout history of men and women who stood for what's right. They had the courage to go forward even if they were afraid. And I pray, God, that you would raise up from this room many bold, courageous truth speakers and people who do what is right.